What's Murphy's Law? Is Murphy a real person? What are some of the fun variations on the law? And why was a chimpanzee strapped to a rocket sled? All this and more coming up. Keep watching. But first, do subscribe to The English Nut. Thanks. My fridge broke down, the toaster died, the microwave just sat and cried, the toilet lost its urge to flush, the freezer contents turned to mush, the vacuum cleaner doesn't suck, the coffee maker runs amok, the oven smokes, the dryer too, the washer coughs as though on cue. These lines are from a poem called Murphy's Law. They illustrate the adage known as Murphy's Law, which states that anything that can go wrong will go wrong. I particularly like the line, "The vacuum cleaner doesn't suck." While this literally means the appliance doesn't do its job of sucking up dirt, there's a little joke packed into it. In American slang, when you say something sucks, it means something is bad or frustrating. So saying the vacuum cleaner doesn't suck can also mean that it works well, creating a witty contradiction. I used to think that Murphy's Law was just an interesting name made up for the adage. I was surprised to discover that the Murphy in Murphy's Law was a real person. His full name was Edward Murphy. He was an American aerospace engineer who worked on a project at the Edwards Air Force Base in California in the 1940s. But Murphy doesn't get all the credit for coming up with Murphy's Law. At least a part of the credit goes to Dr. John Stapp, a US Air Force colonel. From 1948 to 1949, Stapp headed the research project at the Air Force Base to test the human tolerance for G-forces during rapid deceleration. The tests were performed using a rocket sled mounted on a railroad track. Stapp was his own guinea pig. He would strap himself to the sled and try to measure the G-forces on him after applying the brakes when the rocket sled was going super fast. But he wasn't able to get an accurate measurement. Murphy suggested a certain type of gauge to measure the G-forces correctly. Curiously, this time they decided to use a chimpanzee instead of Dr. Stapp as the guinea pig. Imagine a chimpanzee barreling down a railroad track on a rocket sled. It must have been frightened half to death. And unfortunately, Murphy's assistant installed the gauges incorrectly, so the experiment failed. That's when an annoyed Murphy said, "If there's any way to do it wrong, he will find it." Later, after the problems were sorted out, a press conference was held. There, Stapp was asked how there were no major injuries during the tests. This is when he recast Murphy's statement and presented it as Murphy's Law. Anything that can go wrong will go wrong. Stapp announced that it was because they took Murphy's Law into account that they could avoid accidents. They used the law to consider all possible things that could go wrong and then preempted them. So the original use of Murphy's Law was a positive one, as an approach to avoid accidents and failures through foresight. Murphy's Law was a catchy idea with a catchy name, and it quickly caught on. It appealed to the public at large not because it helped them preempt problems, but as a darkly humorous way to describe everything going wrong. Soon people started coming up with their own interesting variations to the statement. American author Arthur Bloch wrote a series of books on Murphy's Law and its many variations. His first book is titled Murphy's Law and Other Reasons Why Things Go Wrong. In different publications of the book, the word wrong in the title is printed upside down or shown with a letter fallen out of it, as a humorous nod to the law. An optimistic take on Murphy's Law is Ephrem's Law, which states anything that can go right will go right. In case you haven't guessed it, Ephrem is Murphy spelled backwards. Yet another variation and deliberate misspelling is called Muffrey's Law. And this law is one that I need to be mindful of because it's relevant to English nuts. It says that if you write anything criticizing editing or proofreading, there will be a fault of some kind in what you have written. The American Dialect Society is a society dedicated to the study of the English language. Its members have researched Murphy's Law to see if this idea really originated with Murphy and Stapp. What they have found is that similar statements had been made long before Stapp and Murphy came up with it. For example, in 1866, British mathematician Augustus De Morgan wrote, "The first experiment already illustrates a truth of the theory, well confirmed by practice. Whatever can happen will happen if we make trials enough. De Morgan, who's famous for De Morgan's laws, was born in Madurai, India in 1806. Of course, his statement is not quite the same as the version associated with Edward Murphy. We don't really know whether statements like this provided inspiration for Murphy's Law as we know it today. I'll tell you one more witty corollary to the law before we go. It's called Mrs. Murphy's Law. It says that anything that can go wrong will go wrong while Mr. Murphy is out of town. Have you ever experienced Murphy's Law? Do you know any other interesting variations to it? Do let me know in the comments section. Please subscribe to The English Nut on YouTube. Click on the bell icon too so you're notified as soon as I release a new video. I'm The English Nut. Bye for now.